60 minutes before every game, there's a chapel. And so anybody from our team and anybody from the away team come together in one room. And then we get to hear a message.
Welcome to Sports Spectrum, keeping Jesus in the sports conversation. Here's your host for today's show, former ESPN producer, Jason Romano.
Hey, Megan Gustafson, welcome to Sports Spectrum. How you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing great. Great to have you here. As you travel on the road, as we're getting you here during a long WNBA season, you're with the Phoenix Mercury. I want to go back a little bit and figured I'd start here on April 28th. That was, you had signed earlier this year to return to Washington, and you suddenly find yourself gone from the Mystics and you sign with the Phoenix Mercury. And I just thought that's a great place to start because, and we're going to talk faith as well and the importance of faith in your life. But I think the faith comes into play here a lot when you think about the emotions and the thoughts that you had with what was a roller coaster few days for you. In fact, you and I were talking about trying to set up this interview, and in the midst of it, you're changing teams and trying to figure out, like, where am I going next? And what am I doing here? What was that like for you, kind of those couple days?
Yeah, it was obviously a whirlwind. This is this summer marks my 4th year as a pro already, which I cannot believe. It's crazy how fast time flies.
Yeah.
But knowing that and being in the pros, there's so much change that you have to get used to. This spring I was with the Mystics, the training camp. I was with them last summer. I got picked up by them in June of last summer. And so I was excited to come back to training camp. And it's always a tough 3 weeks, I think, for every single WNBA team. You're trying to battle for those positions. And yeah, unfortunately, I did injure my hamstring a couple days before getting cut. And so I was sitting out of practice, which really decreased my chances of making the final roster. And so, I was cut. I got the news, and I spent the weekend with my best friend who lives in Richmond, Virginia. And before I flew home for exactly one day, less than 24 hours before I got the call to go to Phoenix. So it was quite the whirlwind. Mentally, it's a lot to kind of process, but I sort of gotten used to it being a pro.
Yeah. And then you arrive with a new team and you just try to fit in and, have your opportunity to figure out what way that you can be, a contributor to the team. What was that like, just arriving? And, they have a lot of veterans and some incredible talent with Phoenix, and you kind of arrive and try to find your place there. What was that like early on, trying to figure that out?
Right. So originally when I got the phone call, it was about 3 days before final rosters were announced for each team. And my agent called me and she's like, "Can you get on a plane tomorrow morning?" And I was like, "Okay, where are we going?" And she's like, "All right, Phoenix wants you. They need a post presence inside." And I was like, "Okay, I'm going to get on the plane." They booked my flight that next morning. And at that point, we had 2 days left of camp. And I actually practiced that day. So I got off the plane, went straight to practiced, and then had another day practice. And then they pulled me aside after that second practice and they said, "You made the team." So it was an evaluation period. I didn't know if I was going to make it, but thankfully I was able to perform well enough that they kept me around for a little bit.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. Describe what it's like to play with someone like a Diana Taurasi, your teammate. Is still playing at a high level at 40 years old. And you just look at her and you think of some of the legends of basketball, and she's right at the top of that list. What's it like to be around a player like that in a game situation or just as a teammate?
It's so cool. I mean, I've grown up, watching women's basketball and basketball in general, and to be around somebody like her it's so exciting for somebody like me, being a young player in the league and learning from her, getting passes from her. I still get a little starstruck each time I finish a basket off of her assist. I'm like, okay, good. My first basket was actually in a Phoenix uniform, was actually a pass from her. So I'm just really blessed that I get to surround myself each and every day with these types of not only players, but women and role models.
Yeah. 25 years old, you are. She's 40. What do you think you'll be doing when you're 40 years old? You think you'll still be playing basketball?
I mean, I hope my body will allow that to happen.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed, but I have no idea.
I know it's hard to even think, 2 years down the road, much less a few 15 years down the road, Megan Gustafson.
Right.
Let's go back a little bit. Let's learn about your journey, Megan. God gifted you with height. You're 6'3", so I imagine you were always one of the tallest in your classes growing up. I could be wrong on that, but that can be tough for a woman to stand out at 6'3". What were those years like for you as you were, figuring out your identity and, having confidence growing up and just trying to figure out life as you were, going into your teen years and just becoming, a young person?
Yeah, I think growing up in a small town, there's certain things that don't really change much, and there aren't a lot of differences. And so, kind of being somebody who sticks out in a crowd, and you put that person in a small town, and it kind of becomes amplified, right? People aren't really used to that. They have to kind of figure it out and figure out me and how I am, and vice versa. I had to figure out how I'm to fit in or I'm to stand out. And ultimately I was able to stand out. Thankfully I've had such a great support system in my parents and my sister. My sister's 2 years older than me, so I always had a role model growing up. I wanted to be just like her. She also did sports. She did basketball. She played at Upper Iowa University for 2 years, and my parents also played college basketball. And so thankfully I've had such awesome role models that I was able to really embrace being tall and being somebody who stands out right away. And I love that. I wasn't afraid of it. I wasn't unconfident because of it. I think it just brought me forward each and every day.
So when did you realize that, you're playing basketball and it's fun or whatever, but, oh, wait a minute, I'm kind of good at this. And I say, obviously with humility, but there's a moment, I think, when you realize it's usually 7th, 8th, 9th grade, when you're clearly the best player or one of the best players, and God has gifted you with some talent and you have a passion for this game too. Was there a moment when you realized, okay, yeah, this is maybe something I want to dig a lot deeper into?
Yeah, there was actually a particular moment. I've actually told this story a couple times during my time at Iowa, but I was in 8th grade, and we were about to start the basketball season. But unfortunately, we did not have enough girls to want to be on the basketball team. There was only, I think, 3 or 4 of us. We obviously need 5 or more. So I talked to the boys coach, and he had us go on play on the boys team. And not only did I play, I started, and I was a leading rebounder. And there was one game in particular that we were playing against a different boys team. And during a timeout, the coach came over to my coach and said I was being too rough on the boys, on their boys. So at that point, I was like, I can do this at a high level.
And then obviously you went on to do it at a very high level at Iowa. Let me ask you about your faith. We'll get back to basketball in a second. I know your faith's very important to you. That's what this show is about. Not just sports, but the intersection of sports and faith. Tell me about your faith and your love for Jesus.
Yeah, so I grew up in a Christian family household. Very thankful for that. I was introduced to Jesus at a very early age, going to church every Sunday. And I think just being around my parents too, they're such strong believers in Jesus, and just to watch them live out their lives every day, that was really inspirational for me and my sister. And that really helped, growing up, going into college and beyond. I think we knew what our beliefs were, and we stood firm in those, and we knew what our standards were too. And so I'm really thankful. And a lot of times leaning on your faith is so important, especially when times are tough. And there's a lot of tough times in sports, and being an athlete, there's a lot of ups and a lot of downs.
Yeah.
And something that I've heard Tim Tebow says this a lot, you need to really base your happiness and your purpose off of your creator and not your circumstances. Circumstances can always change. There's always going to be trials, tribulations, but at the end of the day, your creator, our creator, Jesus Christ, and our Lord and Savior, he's never going to change, and he's always going to be there.
Yeah. And I think that's beautifully said, but yet when success comes, it's hard. And you had a lot of success at Iowa. I want to talk about the success side of it in a minute, but staying grounded in your faith. How were you able to handle that and stay humble amidst a lot of people praising you, a lot of pats on the back, a lot of people saying, look at you, you're awesome, you're amazing, you're this amazing basketball player. How are you able to stay grounded and humble and firm in your faith when all the accolades are coming your way?
Yeah, I think coming from humble beginnings is something that I always try to remind myself of. I graduated with a class of 11 kids. a town of less than 200, yeah, 11 kids,
11 kids.
a town of less than 200 people.
Wow.
And just knowing that and staying grounded and how hard I had to work. I had to work twice as hard as other people who lived in bigger cities who had easy opportunities, maybe not necessarily easy, but more access to different opportunities, such as getting extra coaching or, professional training, that kinds of things to jump them to that next level. Exposure was another thing too. Being on an AAU program was really hard for me. I was 3 hours away from the nearest AAU program. And so my parents would drive me, every week just to get to practices and games. And so I'm really thankful for that. And just reminding myself of, I didn't get here on my own. I had so many people around me. I had my parents, my sister, my extended family, my friends. They were all supporting me each and every way. And I think that's the easiest way to kind of humble yourselves in those times of success, is knowing that you didn't get here by yourself. At college at Iowa, I did not get there by myself. I couldn't have done anything that I did without my teammates, because they were there pushing me every day. They were encouraging me. They were picking me up when I fell down or anything like that. And so I'm just thankful that I had such a great support system, and I still do.
When you were at Iowa, what did, if at all, what did discipleship look like? What did time with God, whether it was Bible studies, whether it was just prayer, you growing in your faith? Obviously you're just growing as a person. That's such an influential time in a person's life when they're 19, 20, 21 years old. What did that look like for you spiritually, growing in your faith and being able to be discipled during your time at Iowa?
Yeah, so I was thankful that University of Iowa has a couple of Christian athlete groups. There's Fellowship of Christian Athletes, but mainly I was with Athletes in Action. And they're such a great group. They meet on a weekly basis, and they talk about different types of situations in sports and how you can use your faith to implement it into your sport. And so I was able to attend those all throughout my years at Iowa. Not only that, but I had some teammates that were strong believers as well. And so I think having teammates like that surrounding you every single day is really helpful. It's inspirational. And I also went on a trip with Athletes in Action in 2018, leading into my senior year. I went with a fellow teammate, Hannah Stewart. We went to the national campus for Athletes in Action in Ohio for a few days to kind of have like a mini training camp.
Yeah.
And then we traveled to Sao Paulo, Brazil, and we played in some games. We won the championship, and we were able to do some mission stuff as well. So that was really cool.
Yeah, I have to imagine that encouraged you and helped you grow, not just spiritually, but that transfers over to the court and into the locker room, and you being a better teammate and a better player. I have to imagine it doesn't guarantee success, but it helps probably prepare you to, withstand all of the different, like you said, ups and downs that come as a basketball player.
Yeah, for sure. I think being able to focus on your faith and continuing to learn and dive in scriptures, meeting up with teammates, having Bible studies, being in small groups from your church or whatever it is, it really helps you kind of build that relationship with Jesus and to try to understand him and how he would live out his life. And then it's easier to kind of face those different trials and struggles, bad shooting days, good shooting days, all of those struggles that come with being a basketball player. But yeah, I'm just thankful that I had those opportunities at Iowa.
When you think about 2018, 2019, and really it could be both seasons. Your junior year was a fantastic year as well, but your senior year, 27.8 points, 13 rebounds a game, but Naismith Player of the Year, AP Player of the Year, like so many accolades. That was such a special season. When you think back, I should say everybody would dream of having that final year be a year like you had at Iowa. What kind of emotions and thoughts come back when people ask you about that senior season and how special it was?
Yeah, just thinking about that season, it just brings a smile to my face instantly. I couldn't have scripted it better, to be honest. Obviously a national championship would have been awesome, but getting to the Elite Eight for the first time in Coach Bluter's, history was something we wanted to do as a team. And I think having that junior year, we did really well, but we got cut short in the NCAA tournament, and we wanted to kind of get past that obstacle and make a deep run. And so I'm just thankful grateful, appreciative of everyone that was there with me. And I think whenever I think about those seasons, I don't think necessarily about the trophies or the accolades. I don't. I think about the people that were there with me. I think about my fellow seniors, Hannah Stewart, Tanaya Davis. I think about Coach Bluter. I think of Jan Jensen, my post coach. I see them smiling. I picture everything that happened that day. And it's just a special moment to think about getting to the Elite Eight, but also that Big Ten championship. And yeah, it's fun to reflect on. When I was in the moment, there was so much going on and there were so many games after game after game. It was kind of hard to reflect until after, but thankfully now I've had time to kind of, sit back and remember everything.
Well, one amazing way to reflect was right before the pandemic. And I recently went back and watched, YouTube has everything, right? And I went back and watched your jersey retirement ceremony, which was right before the pandemic hit. And it was such an emotional scene watching you. I could just sense there was this overwhelming amount of gratitude as all of these people were talking about how amazing you are. And then you see your jersey get, raised to the rafters, your number 10 retired by Iowa. Please describe what that day is like. That's such a cool thing from the outside looking in, and even going back and watching it now. For you, that must have been special and kind of that climactic moment of a career that you just described.
Yeah, I think it was a great way to kind of put that cherry on top of my career at Iowa. I was playing in actually Budapest, Hungary during that time. And thankfully it worked out. The Hungarian Federation was able to move a couple games around so I could go home for this right before a break. So I flew into Iowa and got to spend a day before, visiting with everybody, with my coaches, teammates, that kind of thing. And then I was able to watch the game and it was really fun. I was courtside with my family. And yeah, it was just a very special ceremony. The way that they put it all together was incredible. They put up these videos on the video board of people congratulating me, and then showed some highlights. And I think the moment though for me was actually visually seeing the jersey go up in the rafters. And while it was going up, they were saying all those things. I was like, well, I really did all that. But no, it was just a really special moment to think about, and also a bit sad too, because that kind of just finalized my time. I had come to a close at Iowa. I am a grad student actually online through their master's program. I'm getting my MBA, but nice. As my time as a student athlete. So just so many fond memories, and I'm just very thankful that God put me in a position to be at Iowa.
What was that adjustment like to the pros? You were a second round selection, 2019 by Dallas. You were with Dallas, Washington, as you described, and now Phoenix. You even mentioned playing overseas in Hungary. What was that like for you, adjusting to a professional style of basketball and a professional lifestyle of basketball, as opposed to what you knew in college? What was that like for you?
Yeah, it was like probably a deer in the headlight moment, to be honest. Obviously getting drafted was really fun, and I got to go to the draft party, and that was awesome. But then you get to camp and you experience your very first training camp as a rookie. It's not easy. So it was just a very humbling moment too. I think there were a lot of expectations on myself that I put on myself, the others put on myself to really go into the WNBA and do well. There was also people that didn't think I would do well. So there was a lot of different opposing views on how I would do. And so I think I put a lot of pressure on myself, and I tried to lean on my support system as much as possible after getting cut that first time. But first one always stings. Then after that, it's easy. Like right now, I mean, I've been cut 4 times, and it's pretty easy now, to be honest. I just have to get ready for the next opportunity, and kind of having a short-term memory in terms of mistakes that you maybe made in practice or in games, and moving forward. And my style of play is more of a traditional back to the basket post player. And that position's kind of died off a little bit in the WNBA, and it's more guard oriented. And so I basically had to completely break apart my game and reconfigure it in a way that I can be a forward, I can be a stretch, I can shoot threes now, I can face up, I can, still do what I do down low in the back to the basket, but I had to totally reinvent my game, and doing that at the highest level possible was very hard. But thankfully, I've been able to navigate ever so slowly thus far.
Yeah, describe that a little bit, because that's really hard. I mean, I didn't play basketball at the level you play. I mean, I played in high school and a little bit of college, but to say, okay, I've always been this player, this is how I play, the game should adjust to me. No, suddenly you have to adjust your style and you have to
Mhm.
adjust your play. And it's almost like teaching a person how to ride a bike, when they've been riding this kind of bike forever and ever. And now you're saying, nope, you gotta learn how to do it this way and change a few
Mhm.
things. That has to be difficult as an athlete who's been elite, right, in college and successful playing a certain type of style.
Exactly. And I think a lot of it that goes into the behind the scenes that people don't see is where you get the work done. So, for example, when I got called back to Dallas my rookie year, I didn't play much at all. I was doing extra workouts before and after practice. I was the first one in the gym. I was the last one to leave. I mean, I remember being kicked out a couple times by my head coach. He's like, "Go home, like you're you're done working out." And just being able to have that work ethic mentality is just really important to sustain yourself in the league. Because if you don't work hard on developing yourself, you're not going to be able to sustain it at all.
Right.
Especially a bubble player like me, who maybe I'm that 10th, 11th, 12th spot, and sometimes that can be easily traded for somebody else that has similar skill set as me. At first, that was hard to accept. I thought coming into it, I had these skills that nobody else really had. I had the abilities and all of that, but at this point, everybody is so athletic and so gifted, so talented. Um, you just have to really be thrown into the fire first before realizing it. And slowly you figure out different things that can make you stand out. And you just got to keep working hard, put your head down and work. And to this day, I still am doing extra workouts all the time before and after practices. So I'm just thankful that I have a great support system again from back home, but also the organizations with the WNBA. They do a really good job of working with you behind the scenes.
So tell me what your faith journey looks like now. What's it look like to stay
Mhm.
connected to God during, a season like you're in right now, literally the season of playing in the WNBA? And I don't know this, I should know this, and I didn't do my research on this, so this is a bad job by me, but I assume there's team chaplains and there's availability
Mhm.
that way for the players. But it's also grueling. Like I said, you're in a hotel right now on the road traveling, and life comes at you fast. What's it look like for you now today to stay
Mhm.
in touch with God and be able to keep your spiritual life, strong?
Yeah, I think the importance of keeping your faith strong is so important right now, in
Mm.
being always in a changing environment, each and every season, each and every month, whatever it is. I really try to focus on a lot more individual growth with God, and whether that's taking a few minutes in the morning or in the evening of just diving into scripture and spending that time. I get daily emails from our daily bread for those devotionals.
Yeah.
Trying to read some different books written by Christian athletes, that kind of thing, and just trying to stay connected that way. And like you said, there are team chaplains. So what's really cool is 60 minutes before every game, there's a chapel. And so anybody from our team and anybody from the away team come together in one room, and then we get to hear a message from that home team's chaplain, and so we pray together. We get together and we form those relationships and bonds with other believers that are in the WNBA, and so it's a really special time for me. I never miss in chapel, no matter what. So it's just nice to be able to have that time that they carve out for us.
So I talked to a basketball Hall of Famer recently. His name is Bobby Jones, and he is the guy, he played with the Philadelphia 76ers in the 80s. And, with Dr. J and those guys, Magic
Mhm.
Bird. So he's played like with some of the greats and some of the best times in the NBA. He's actually the guy, from what I was told, and he kind of confirmed that he was trying to be humble, but he was the guy that actually came up with the idea to have a chapel service in the NBA
Mm.
and have both teams attend. And I said to him, I said, wait a minute. So you're about to do battle with the Celtics for the Eastern Conference Championship, and those were some battles if you know anything about the early 1980s NBA. And I said, 60 minutes before the game, you're going to get in a room and pray with Larry Bird, right? And pray with the Boston Celtics and then go do battle. I said, please describe that. And he kind of shared what that was like. And he said, don't get me wrong. Once we said, in Jesus' name, amen, it was time to go do battle and do the best you could for your team. So I'm just asking you from your perspective, how are you forming those relationships with people that you then want to go out and, beat the tails off on the basketball court when you're praying with them and you're fellowshipping with them an hour earlier? I just think it's fascinating to me because even, in the NBA playoffs and in the WNBA playoffs, like those times together as chapel services don't stop. I had a chaplain on from one of the teams that played in the finals a couple of years ago and said, oh yeah, game 6 NBA finals or game 6 WNBA finals, game 4 WNBA finals, they were gathering together and they were coming to chapel service. And I thought, I love that, but it's also hard to imagine that you're doing this with the team that you're about to go do battle with.
Yeah, it's a very interesting dynamic. Something I hadn't really experienced, how it's 60 minutes right before the game. At that time, you're supposed to be kind of getting ready for that really tough battle. And I really enjoy it. I think a lot of the other women who attend chapel really enjoy it and they depend on it, honestly. A lot of times those WNBA games, there are high stakes. There's a lot of pressure. You have to perform. You have to perform to the best of your ability. And all the time you're getting evaluated, you're getting judged, whatever it is. And to have those moments, those silent moments, those special moments with other people who know what it's like to be in your shoes is so important. I think a lot of times, especially for me, if I'm trying to connect with, let's say, a small group at church or whatever it is, it's amazing to be able to do that, but it's even more so amazing to do that with people who know what it's like to live my life as well. They know the struggles that I go through. They understand how hard it is to be an athlete. They're the ones that they understand that it's not just those big bright light moments, those glory moments, those success moments, because to be honest, it's a lot of hard days that lead up to those days. And so just having that time, I think it's really special. It is a different dynamic, right? When you end those prayers and then it's time to go back to focusing. But as athletes, we're pretty good at compartmentalizing things too, is being present, being in the moment, being where your feet are, as Coach Bluter loves to say. And so that is also something that I think athletes have a better time of adjusting to as well.
How well attended is chapel? I'm just curious. I mean, is there a good core group of faith-filled people in the WNBA at Chen Chapel each time?
Yeah, so it kind of just depends from each team. Usually I have about 2 or 3 others that join me on my team. Right now, in previous teams, there's been 4 or 5. It kind of just depends on what team you're on. But usually there I would say probably about 3 or 4 from each team will attend it, and it's just really cool to be able to do that and get to know some of the other girls on the other team as well.
Yeah, Megan Gustafson's our guest on Sports Spectrum. Thank you so much for being here today. One last question for you. When you think about where God has you today, where you are right now, what do you think is the biggest lesson that God is teaching you and showing you today where you are? What's the great lesson that you think God is impressing upon your heart?
Yeah, I think for me, and looking back on my journey of how many times I've had to change teams and rely on my faith, it would definitely be just putting my 100% trust in God, no matter what the circumstances are, no matter what I'm facing, no matter what kind of cut is coming next, no matter what kind of team I'm going to be picked up by, wherever in the world I'm going to be, who knows? But at the same time, I know that God is always there. He's always present. He's going to get me through any kind of battle, any kind of adversity. And he's also working. He's always working. And I think even when you don't understand how he's working, or if you don't feel him working, he is. And I think that's really, really important to understand as an athlete myself, and as anybody in any kind of job or career in life. It's just going through those battles and going through those circumstances, just knowing that your creator is so much more than that.
Yeah, that's really well said. Megan, thank you. Thanks for the time. Thanks for coming on the show. Glad that we could connect. Continued success. We'll be watching you the rest of this season and wish you nothing but the best. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me on.